Okay, good evening, everybody. Let's get started. Welcome to the 2024 Barrington Candidate Forum. I'm Ron St. Jean here with Jack Gale and Connor McIver. We're hosting this because we want to give candidates an opportunity to meet the public a little bit at a venue that's a little more cozy than the transfer station. Not that that's not a pleasant place to hang out, but this will give people a chance to meet in person, and also there's folks at home, hopefully, that are watching. I know Jackie's watching, so we'll be able to meet in the comfort of people's living rooms. Connor had the great idea of dedicating a segment, the first segment of the evening, to uncontested candidates. Often they don't get a chance to get up and speak and get known a little bit. Several uncontested candidates are here tonight, including Jack and myself. But we will ask uncontested folks to come up to the podium and introduce themselves, say who they are, why they're running, what they're running for. So you'll get at least a chance to see some of those folks. Not everybody could be here tonight, but we do have a number. So let me start with, who should we start with? Let's start with some library trustees. There are three running for a 3-year term and one running for a 1-year term, uncontested. So let's start with somebody who's familiar with public speaking, Lydia Kopp. So, yeah. And if we can keep it to about 2 minutes, that would be great.
So my name is Lydia Kopp, and I'm running for re-election as a library trustee. Just a little background, I'm a special education teacher at Mohammed Elementary School, and I've been a teacher there for about 30 years. I've lived in Barrington for 32 years, and have been involved with the library for all of those years. I started as a patron, and then became a friend soon after, a friend of the library, and then later a trustee. And Ron actually got me on the trustee board. He said, start as an alternate, and that's what I did. I'm also, I wanted to mention, a Barrington Bloomer, very proud. And I'm running for trustee because I love our library. I love books. I love real books. I cannot tell you how much money I've saved just taking out books from the library instead of buying them. And I also have to say we have the most wonderful, wonderful library staff. It's amazing. The programs that they put together fit everybody's needs. They have story times, they have art, crafts, nature, gardening, history, yoga, and even tying knots, just about anything you can imagine. And I just want to encourage everyone to visit the library. If you haven't visited the library, please visit the library, look at their website, just see the programs that they have available. And I also want to just say, I really encourage people, any viewers who are not involved in our town, please get involved. That's how I've met so many friends in town, and there's so many different organizations that would love to have your help. So thank you. And also, please come and vote on March 12th.
Thanks, Lydia. Also running for a 3-year term is library trustee Melanie Haley.
Good evening. My name is Melanie Haley. I've been a longtime Barrington resident. I started serving as a library trustee a couple of years ago. At the time, I was not exactly sure what the role of a trustee entailed, but as a frequent library patron, I knew I wanted to get more involved in supporting the library in any way that I could. So now in 2024, I can say for certain that one of the most important responsibilities of a library trustee is to be an advocate for the library and the community that it serves. And I would be honored to continue serving the town of Barrington in this capacity. Thank you.
Okay, also running for a 3-year term is Ezra Hodgson. Is Ezra here? I don't see Ezra. Would somebody like to pretend to be Ezra for a little while? Okay, Susan Gaudiello, the chair of the Board of Trustees, will fill in for Ezra.
Thank you. I'm not Ezra. Obviously, if you meet Ezra, you'll recognize him right away because he looks about 8 feet tall. But he's a young man who's been in town with his family, I think about 6 or 8 years. He became involved with the library, I think really with his children, and became a volunteer at the library. And we encouraged him to become an alternate library trustee. And he had assumed that role since I think last fall. And he's an active member of the trustees. That is to say, while he can't vote unless another trustee is absent, he is active in the discussion, and I think we've all been very impressed by what he's brought to the table. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees, we're very happy that Ezra has decided to run for vacancy. And of course, I would encourage you to give him your support as well. Thanks.
And running for a one-year term is another veteran trustee, Susan Frankel.
I'm Susan Frankel, and I'm running for my 3rd term. This will be my 8th year. Like others have said, I started as a trustee, as an alternate trustee, then became a full-time trustee. I also volunteer at the library, and I'm a friend of the library. I'm running for my 3rd term, as I said. Library trustees have 3 principal responsibilities. We hire and manage the library director. We adopt policies that govern the library, and we ensure funding is adequate for the library. In meeting those responsibilities, I'm running again to continue to make our public library the success that it is. A welcoming place and a quality resource for everybody in town. Thank you, and vote March 12th.
Thank you, Susan. We have 2 candidates uncontested for supervisors of the checklist, Norm Tremblay and Suzanne McNeil. I don't think either one are here tonight. Okay, nobody ever runs against the supervisor. Also for cemetery trustee uncontested, Jerry Califf. I don't think he's here. Nope, he's not here. Some guy's running for trustee of the trust funds, Jack Gale here, so he'll tell you a little bit about that.
Good evening. My name is Jack Gale, and I'm running for one of the trustee of the trust fund positions in Barrington. I've served for about the last year and a half as I was appointed to fill an appointment for a vacancy. For many of you people, this is probably the only job time you'll see me where I'm not wearing a warm coat and hiking boots. Before I ask for your vote, you might want to have an idea of what we do. We keep a watchful eye on over $5.3 million that you voted to save. And you've chosen to set aside for things like cemeteries to schools, buildings to dams, and roads to bridges. We monitor our investments in the bank and their performance and the town's spending so that all our collective goals are met. I hope to continue with the improvements we've implemented in the last year or 2, including a new procedure governing all the mechanics that we have to do with our interrelations with the bank and the town. It's now all written down. We now have online bank access where we've got to jump through about 23 hoops of security, but we can figure out exactly today, if we wanted to, exactly what the town's money's worth. And we've cross-trained all the trustees. For the first time in a long time, all of us can do all the basic functions, deposits, checks, interacting with the banks. We are part of the checks and balances that make our town government and our community work. I ask to continue that by asking for your vote on March 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I mentioned, I'm running for town moderator and school district moderator again. For some reason, it's a strange job, but I enjoy it. For this last election and for big elections, the responsibility is there for hiring like 40 to 45 people for an election. It takes a lot of people to run an election. So we do that. So we hire and schedule people and just kind of oversee how the whole day goes. And I find nothing more satisfying than sometime during a big election day, just looking out there and watching the people voting and not having to wait in line for very long and just moving through, many of them happy because the process has gone smoothly. And, we come up with accurate counts at the end of the night, and the whole process just works really well. I get to coordinate with the town clerk and her office, and we work together to, with the various other town officials to run the elections and run the deliberative sessions, and it's kind of fun. This year we've got like 6 events. Alternate years we have like 2 or 3, 2 deliberatives and a town election. So it varies how much work there is. Seems like every week there's an election this year, but it's fun. So I like it, and I've been doing it for 6 years, and I hope to keep at it for a couple more. Anyway, also on the school side, Cindy Taylor's running uncontested for treasurer, and Marie Cummings is running uncontested for clerk. And I think that's everybody. So we've got a couple minutes left before the school board portion. So if anybody has questions for anybody who you've heard tonight who is running uncontested, we would welcome those. Those people may not welcome them, but we'll try that anyway, just to see if there's anything you want to ask a trustee or any of us. At home, you can do that too. Come on, Jackie, raise your hand. Ask a question. You're featured here, Jackie. I didn't know if you knew that, but you're on the TV. Anybody have any questions? Any? Last call. Anybody at home? Don't see anybody there, Connor?
No.
Okay. Well, I guess that's
If I
going
had realized I'd be featured, I should have dressed more, properly.
Well, the backdrop goes with your hair, so you've done well. All right. Well, we can always sneak in a couple minutes early into the school board portion. So if you folks want to come on up and have a seat, we have 3 school board candidates, and Jack is going to take over the fun part of administering this portion of the program.
Thank you, Ron. We have 3 candidates tonight for 2 positions with the school board. The format tonight will be a 3-minute introduction by each candidate, or up to 3 minutes. Questions from the audience. We ask that you get to the question. No, we don't need your position. We want you to elicit theirs, and they will have 2 minutes to answer. We will alternate so that, yes, no one candidate has to field the question first. This will last about 45 minutes. We encourage you, if you hear something, to get a question in your head and stand in line to be able to give it. We ask that you allow people up for the first time, get their question in if you want to come back for a second question. Our first candidate for introduction tonight will be Richard Walker, Jr.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me out there? Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you folks tonight. My name's Rick Walker. A lot of you know me. I've lived in town for just shy of 60 years. If you do the math, I'm only 42 years old. So, but anyway, my wife and I live over on Green Hill with our 2 dogs, Kenzie and Ellie. 2 daughters, Nikki and Whitney, were educated in the Barrington school systems. Starting in 1st grade, went all the way to middle school, and both graduated from Dover High School, and then went on to college. One daughter is in New Jersey, and the other daughter is now in Rhode Island. I'm currently employed as the fire chief and emergency management director for the town, and I decided to run for the open school board, one of the open school board positions, because I wanted to help foster a new collaborative between the town and the school district, with a goal to provide quality services, perhaps saving some money by sharing purchasing power and resources wherever we can. We were doing this in the early 2010s, and then over time, for a variety of reasons, it kind of fell apart. And for no particular reason, it just isn't happening as much as it was. And so for as long as I can remember, there's always been a we versus them. And I say we versus them, whether it's a school versus a town or the town versus the school. And what it really should be is that we, the school and the town, are working for them, which is all our residents, both young and old. And I want to try to get back to that. As the fire chief, I'm directly or indirectly responsible for over $1 million of taxpayer money. And I work hard to make sure that I do the best job I can spending your money. I have experience with the budget process, which includes building a reasonable budget, a responsible budget that is then selling it to the town select board and the advisory budget committee, and then ultimately the voters. And I try to make sure that I'm prioritizing expenditures in my department based on need first and then want second. And I believe that that's the way the government should run, is that we should be making sure that our needs are being met to the best of the ability of the taxpayers. And then if there's some money left over, let's take care of the wants. We all know that people cost money. That's really why it doesn't matter whether they're town employees or school employees. Employees cost money, and our district has to educate, or is responsible for educating around 1,500 kids. And so, you know, when you look at teachers and teachers' aides and the administration and transportation and specialized education and high school tuition, it's no wonder that we have budgets the size that we do. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if I get elected, I'm not going to save millions, but I do believe that if we subscribe to the philosophy of watching our pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Hatfield.
Hi, my name is Tim Hatfield, and I'm seeking re-election. I started serving the Barrington School Board in 2013 and continued through 2020. I rejoined this past fall when a seat became available. I'm passionate about improving the quality of education for our students. I have 3 children, all of whom have learned and grown in the Barrington School District. Our oldest, Hannah, now attends UNH. Chloe is a junior at Oyster River, and my youngest, Ryan, is in the 1st grade here at BMS. My wife, Abby, has been an educator. A little louder, please. Sure. See if I can move that a little closer. My wife, Abby, has been an educator for the last 13 years and currently teaches 7th grade science at BMS. I have firsthand knowledge of the opportunities and challenges facing our schools. I have a strong analytical, communication, and leadership skills that I believe have been proven valuable to our district. I believe my experience with the budget process, high school negotiations, and community involvement will prove beneficial over the course of this next term. I thank you for your consideration and hope for your support.
Jason Baker.
Good evening. My name is Jason Baker. I reside here in Barrington with my wife Libby and my 3 children. We have Cece in 6th grade at BMS, Jonas in 3rd grade at BES, and we have the hat trick. We have Oliver at preschool at the ECLC. So we are both fortunate and maybe unfortunate to be shepherds of children all throughout town, but it does allow us the privilege of continuing to have firsthand parent experience as to what is going on in all 3 schools, and we continue to do that next year. By day, for the past 16, 17 years, I've worked in public service myself, going back to being a licensed clinical mental health counselor in various settings, to running a special education behavioral program at an elementary school, to a 512 school counselor at a small school in Nashua, to my pride and joy now being in my 11th year at Oyster River High School as a school counselor, which you all know is one of the high schools that is a choice for our students. So I have a student in preschool now, and I welcome in a new crop of 9th graders every year and graduate out a crop of seniors, all from Barrington. And I'm very fortunate to be in that unique position. I'm running because I care about education. I care about advocating for our students on academic, social, emotional, and career levels. It's what I'm charged with as a school counselor. It's something I love doing, And it's something I sometimes I find myself talking to people saying, I want to do that in town too. How do I do that? School board. And it's something I've considered for a while, and it's something I feel I'm in a position to do now. So I want to bring my experience to the town. While at Oyster River, I've authored 2 policies. So I've been the author of policies. I've been to the committees. I've been there for first read, presenting to the school board, second read. 2 policies, one groundbreaking, first in our state policy that has been adopted not only statewide, but nationwide. And then also I'm at school, part of, you may have heard of MTSS, Multi-Tiered Systems of Supports. I'm on the MTSS Universal and Targeted teams where we study academic data, behavioral data, social emotional concerns, and are constantly analyzing how are our students doing and what do they need to continue to do better, and what do we need as a school to offer our students that we don't have. How do we bring that to my supervisor? How do we bring that to our superintendent to bring to the board for the budgeting purpose? I do it by day, so I'm really looking forward to hopefully doing it by night, and I can't do that unless I have your support. So I thank you, and I hope to see you on March 12th, my son's 5th birthday. I'll be there holding the sign and at the polls, so I hope to see you there.
We'd like to ask our audience now to please step up and pose some questions to the candidates. Please announce your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Matt Town. I live at 36 Stillwater Way here in Barrington. First of all, I want to thank the 3 contestants, if you will, for stepping up to try to run. So I appreciate that. So the question I have is brief, but I'd ask you to expand upon it. And then the question I have is, what specifically about your educational background and your experiential background that prepares you and informs you for this role?
Tim?
So I've worked on the school board since 2013. So I think the experience that I've learned through that process applies directly to what we're doing. One of the specific things that I'm looking forward to being a part of is the high school negotiation. Right now, all 3 of our high schools are up for that negotiation. And I think understanding how we got here informs where we're going to go with those decisions, right? So we have a lot of leverage. We have a lot of great kids in this community, and we want to make sure that they're taken care of and that the schools we're sending to understand what we're providing to them.
Jason?
So my background and experience is really student-centered largely. What do our students need to be the best they can be? And that's academic, again, social, emotional, and career-wise. They are all our kids. We bring them in, and we're shaping them for life after high school. So, and every step of the way is vitally important. I've worked in all levels. I've had kids on mental health caseloads as young as 4. I have students as old as 22 at the high school. So I cover a gamut of different walks of life. We have the valedictorian going to Ivy League to the student who you're pulling out every stop to try to get them to graduate. And it's not one person, it's a community. And it goes all the way up to the school board. I'm very fortunate to work in a district with a very supportive school board, and I'm very fortunate to live in a town with a supportive board who wants the best for our children. I've developed policy that is inclusive of all students. I've implemented programs for career development programs for students. NAMI is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. I am a NAMI Connect suicide prevention trainer, so I train the people who train the people who look for the signs of mental illness and suicidality in students. So I do more of the groundwork, but I've done it with the board. The reception of my work at the board level has been positive. So I think I'm ready to dive right in, and it's only 11 miles away from where I work, but it's a different district, but there's some similarity, but there's differences. So there is an opportunity to learn and to grow, but I'm ready to dive right in.
Thank you. Richard?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for that question. I served on the school board in the late 90s. And I will readily admit the first year I spent on that school board, I was like a fish out of water. I didn't realize just sometimes the amount of work it took to try to get a decision made. And what I mean by that is that if you at home, if your family wants to make a major purchase or something, it's usually, maybe a husband and a wife that have a discussion about that major purchase. And when you sit on the school board and you're one of 5 people and the superintendent comes to the board and says, we'd like to do X, sometimes we need more information. Sometimes the discussion goes back and forth. So it's not always the luxury of, yeah, okay, we can do that. Sometimes it takes a few weeks to finally get to making a decision. And having spent the last 23 years as a fire chief in town, I was responsible for building budgets to provide fire protection for the town. So I have a lot of experience putting budgets together and working with the selectmen to try and convince them that my way is the right way. And sometimes I succeed and sometimes I don't. And I'm okay with that. I'm a firm believer that there'll be 5 unique individuals sitting up there at that table. Hopefully I'll be one of them, with all a little bit of a different idea on sometimes whether we should go left or right. And the beautiful part about that is that people can have a discussion about it, and afterwards you vote, and maybe it'll be a 5-0 vote, maybe it'll be a 4-1 vote. But I do believe that my experience in government makes me a prime candidate for a school board seat.
Thank you. Do we have another question from the audience? Can we bring one in? Oh, we do.
Frank Natale, 115 Tolan Road. So my question specifically for Jason, but I'll frame it in a way for the other candidates to speak on as well. Thank you again for this opportunity, to Ron and Jack for moderating this debate. Jason, on a recent social media post, you said along the lines of, quote, there's a movement against public education that we need to defeat. Can you speak more to that? What does that mean to you? I know it's a broad statement, just specifically, and to the other candidates, do you agree with Jason that our public education is under attack, and whatever this attack is, do we need to defeat it?
Every year, a new legislative session, there's a slew of bills that come out, and most importantly this year, which is at the state level, I will acknowledge. So I want to acknowledge this is at the state level. Increasing the the financial guidelines for privatized education and vouchers was just recently approved to increase from 350% of the federal poverty level to 500%, which means a family of 4 making $150,000 a year or less can take federal money that should be allocated, is designed to be allocated for public education, and they can apply it to private education or homeschooling. It's something that will affect us at the bottom line when it comes to budgets. If revenue doesn't come in and we need the revenue, where does it come from? We are a single stream of revenue in the state, property taxes, and to already limit what's already limited by the state is very hard, and it's a challenge in every district to provide a high quality public education when the money comes from all of us in this room, and this is a single source, and things are more expensive day by day. So tax bills can only go up unless something changes. So that is an effort that does not help that cause.
Thank you. Richard?
I'm not. I mean, I believe that for years, it's always been this side and that side. And I'll say that in the town, in the fact that, people look from the town side will look at, and I'm speaking in generalities, that, well, the school gets everything, and the school's sitting there saying the town gets everything. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is when I was on the school board back in the late 90s is when the education funding started, in which towns, richer towns contributed money into the pool, and the poorer towns got that money. And, you know, I sit here and say, you know, for me is that if our taxpayers decide how they want their community to look, whether they don't want any building, or they don't want any business, or they want whatever they want. And the thing that was a little bit frustrating to me, and still is that, and I'll use Newington as an example. Newington was a thriving community with more business in it and a very small population base. Their tax rate was at the time in under $10 a thousand, and they fit into the category of being a donor town. So money from them and money from up in Wolfboro and around the lake. Wolfboro contributed money so that towns that didn't want businesses in their town and stuff to help the tax rate got money from them, and that is frustrating to me. I think that if there's gonna be state education aid, that it should be spread out evenly, and that it's up to the taxpayers and the individual community to decide how they want their community to be and how they want to fund both town and school government.
Thank you. Tim?
Yep, so I think our community, as far as Barrington, we support our schools well. I think we look out for one another, and we work toward making sure the education for our children, they excel in that. What I do believe is that Barrington knows what's best for Barrington students, right? And too often these days we're seeing things coming from Washington, from Concord, where they're putting laws in place that create a challenge for us. What we do, and we spend a lot of time in it, and it's not the most fun work, but it's the policy work, right? That's where we take all the laws that are put in place and we spend the time figuring out how can we make this work for Barrington, for our students, for our community. What we really need is people in these positions that can consistently apply common sense. And more that's becoming a challenge these days. I think we have a great community and a great board that does their best to apply that common sense consistently to everything we do and make sure we're impacting our students in the best way. When rules and laws are pushed from outside of our community, we do our best to make sure it's done right here. And I think we do a pretty good job of it.
Thank you. Now we'd like to bring in someone from the ether, the Gingrich household. Not sure who, but your name and address, and please ask your question.
Just remember, you have to unmute yourself first.
You will have to unmute.
Roger or Pat Gingrich. If not, we can move to Jackie Silly.
Jackie?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Great. So Jackie Silly, 8 Oak Hill Road. Tied in with this question and Jason's concern about public schools being under attack. I mean, we hear, every day about folks lobbying school boards to get rid of programs such as diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice, to ban books and so on. I mean, some of this is really severe in some states, not so much in New Hampshire yet. But 2 years ago, the legislature set the stage for those kinds of problems with the passage of a budget that included concerns about, how did they term it, divisive concepts, I think, within our education. And so my question is sort of general to each one of you. Knowing that those pressures are on school boards and knowing that, Barrington is not going to be immune to those kinds of pressures with constituents coming in and lobbying for that. What's your sort of general stance about who puts out the books, who develops the policies, for all of our children and so on?
First up, Richard.
Jackie, thank you for the question. I think that it starts at the top and it starts at the administrative level. And I would say that, the administration would come back with policies or recommendations for policies. They're when I say the administration, I talk about the superintendent and the principals and the buildings and stuff. They're the ones with the feet on the ground. They're the ones that are around the kids all the time and that are dealing with these. And I would trust them to come back and say that we need to look at making policy changes. I'm a firm believer that everybody has a right to be safe, and the way I dress is a little bit different. If you look around this room right now, every single person in this room is dressed a little bit different than the other person, and I think it's important that we keep our kids safe and that kids have the ability to feel safe, whether they come to school with purple hair or green hair or come in there however they want to be dressed. I don't think it's our position to tell them they can't be the way they are, but I do believe it's our position to make sure that every kid that does come to school is treated fairly and they feel safe being in the building.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I think it starts in the classroom, right? Those teachers know what's appropriate and what we're doing with our students. That we're not. I don't think you need to. So it starts in the classrooms. It goes through the administration. We have the right people in the buildings to make those decisions. And beyond that, when it comes to a school board level, we're listening to the recommendations of the people with boots on the ground and also with our community members, right? Again, this goes back to what I was talking about before. I think Barrington makes the right decisions for their students. Barrington makes the right decisions for Barrington. As far as pressures from outside of that, if we were to run every way the wind was blowing, we wouldn't have a consistent education plan, and we need to trust the people that we put in those positions.
Thank you. Jason?
So Jackie, your first question, who puts out the books? The teachers, the media specialists, and we have faith in them. We have faith that the resources they put out are academic, they are intellectually inspiring, and they may upset some folks, and they may really enrich the lives of others. Any good library has content in it that might offend someone, but should also inspire someone. How do we create schools that are open access for all and accepting of all? We do it from every level, from the top down, from the down up. We are even if on school board, even if you're not an educator by trade, you're in some format an educator. You're setting the model for your town. And public education is for the student whose parents have lived here or family has lived here for centuries and has a road named after them, to the student who moves in tomorrow and wants to start tomorrow the day before break. Every one of those students is important. Sorry, I'm a little school counselor there coming out. Well, welcome. Let's go right now. It's for everyone. And regardless of where you're from, what you believe in, what you don't believe in, we're here for you. And we can't be quieting those voices, and we have to be supporting all. So regardless of what the state does, in the absence of state law, school board policy runs our show. So let's look at the policies we do have. Let's look at the ones we don't. Do we need a new one? Do we need to alter one? And that is the work of the collective, of the school board and of the district and school administrators and the educators. So it's a collaborative effort.
Thank you. Questions?
Hi there. My name's Lindsay Maziars. I live at 64 Gracie Way here in Barrington. As a district, we've struggled for years, losing wonderful educators to other towns who compensate at a much higher rate. While we've gotten better, in my opinion, with being more competitive with surrounding towns in regards to compensation for educators, can you share with us how you will continue to support, or if you support, progressing that into the future?
Tim?
Yep. So if you go back to 2011, I believe it was, had our contract fail. At that point, our teachers were one of the lowest paid in the surrounding area. And with that failure, they became the absolute floor. So coming back from that took quite a bit of work. We're at a place where we're competitive. We're certainly not competing with some of those schools out there. But it took a lot of work over 4 or 5 now. 4, right? 4 teacher contracts to make sure we could get ourselves into that position. And the community has supported it. And we have seen growth in that area. I think that's something that we want to continue to do, especially where we've seen since COVID, there has been kind of a shift, right? When people used to come to these meetings, they would tell us all the time, hey, you don't have a salary problem, you're filling every position. We're not filling every position these days, right? During COVID, you saw some schools get very aggressive to get teachers back into the classrooms. And as part of that, it's put us at a spot where we've fallen behind where we probably should be in compensation, where we went from 2019 being pretty competitive. In 2024, we're falling behind that. So I think that's something we have a contract coming up soon. I think that's something that will be looked at. I think that's something that needs to continue to grow.
Thank you. Jason?
So those who don't know me, I'm a little bit of a self-proclaimed computer nerd too. I love Excel. So for fun, this is what I do for fun. I went onto the Department of Education website and looking at average salaries this year. Every district reports average teacher salaries, the minimum and maximum salary based on salary tracks. If you average those out, the minimum average salary, regardless of the track you're on in the state, is $46,000 a year, which I'm talking about the state. That's the minimum, and that's very low. Barrington's low is 42, and the state average max 72, I believe, or 70, and we're at 69. So we are somewhere in the range of average to slightly below for the state. And that is not to discredit the work that has been done. You can't just negotiate once and have us be top in the state. That's not something we can absorb. But when you look at retaining great teachers, hiring new great teachers, they can look 10 miles away and make $15,000, $20,000 a year more, depending on their salary and their level of experience. You don't do it just for the money. Every public educator will tell you they don't do it for the money. We need it, but our folks in town do it for the children first and do it for this community first. And we acknowledge that, and we should honor that, but we should honor them too with the hard work they put in. And it's in every district, so it's no judgment to this one. Teachers are overworked and underpaid. So we do need to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, they've pretty much said everything I was going to say. Yeah, so we run into the same problem on the town side. We have struggled to fill firefighter positions. I lost a full-time firefighter last April, and it took me till October to fill it. So it's the same thing. And so, I'm a firm believer that my kids had some great teachers growing up. And 100%. And I absolutely believe that the teachers that educated my kids and the teachers that are educating the kids today are doing it because of their love of making these kids better. But they're human beings like all of us. There's probably none of them that are millionaires and doing this just for something to do. They need to feed their family. They have bills like everybody else. And if it can cost a lot of money if you take it off the top end and don't pay teachers. If you pay teachers decent money and they stick around, then there's going to be less newer hires, and newer hires are expensive because it takes a while to get them up to speed, to get them up to teaching the curriculum that the district is trying to do. So I am a firm believer of making sure that you have a good plan in place and good teachers are adequately compensated. And if we have teachers that need more work, that we work with them to try to get them up so that we have good teachers. So I do support making sure that we do whatever we can do to try to keep the good teachers that we have.
Thank you. Roger, we have you unmuted. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And sorry, I'm not a computer nerd. First, I'd like to thank each of the three of you guys for stepping up to this opportunity. And I hope you view it as that. My question is directed at Jason, but I'd like each of the other two to reflect generally on what I'm asking Jason. And Jason, you obviously saw a policy gap over to Oyster River, and or perhaps more broadly, but you stepped up, did the homework, put together a policy. I'd like you to mention what that policy is about. It obviously topped what you were concerned about for a while. And then each of the other two of you, you could also stay away from the money question for a bit and talk about policy issues that you think are top of the agenda. Thanks.
Jason.
I'm first. Thank you, Roger. So in 2015, I worked closely with a student who identified as trans female. And the question was, what bathrooms do I use? What locker rooms do I change in? What sports do I play? And we all left wondering the same question, and had the wonderful support of our high school principal, Todd Allen, and our superintendent, James Morris. They said, write something. I'm like, what? How do I do that? How do I write a policy? What's in a policy? Where do I go? So we're a university town. We had the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs, and we had experts in our community, and we reached out. I formed a committee with all 4 different schools that represented counseling and leadership and educators from all 4 schools. We brought in experts, we brought in legal teams, our lawyers. We wrote policies. We took examples of school policies, not board policies, and we turned those into a board-approved policy before the state law kicked in to offer gender identity as a protected class under anti-discrimination law. Again, prior to state law, school board policy was the law of the land. We wrote it. We had many iterations of it. We vetted it with experts, and it picked up steam. And it was, you look at our policy in town, and it's almost a carbon copy of that. Many schools have picked it up. Supreme Court cases have referenced it in amicus brief, friends of the court cases. I don't expect to do that when working on a board with every policy. We're working with our educators. That's not going to happen again. But writing one, having people who know what they're talking about look at it, support it, and then bringing it to our board who supported it, made it happen. So I didn't do it. I started it. We finished it. And that's what I hope to do if I'm here.
Thank you. Richard, on other policies?
Sure. So looking at policies, it's an ever-changing thing. You always have to be looking at policies and making changes because certainly, again, my kids have been out of school for a number of years, and I pretty much guarantee that there's probably little or no policies that were in place when my kids were in school are there today. And I believe the school board looks at a certain number of policies every year and makes revisions, and it's a never-ending cycle in which you look at because society does change. And I'm the old school kind of guy that give a kid a pencil and a paper and have the teacher up there teaching them. And obviously, I'd last about 2.5 minutes today because all of these kids have computers and could find their way around computers way before they'd have the problem solved before I got the computer turned on. And so I merely say that from the standpoint that we do have to review policies on a regular basis because it is an evolving education. It evolves all the time, and what worked yesterday maybe doesn't work today.
Thank you. Tim?
Yes, I don't have a specific policy that I'm overly passionate about. I think I've served on the policy committee, and I think what I've talked about consistently is trying to make sure all the changes, all the policy that we put in place reflects our community and reflects what's best for our children, right? I don't have a great answer for this one because I think we have to take every change, everything that comes through, take it seriously, and try to figure out how it fits for Barrington.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? I'd also like to invite the 23 people online. I guarantee you this works better if you ask questions because nobody up here is going to get voted off the island are going to get a rose. It only works if you come forth with your questions.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Randall Heller, 113 Toland Road. I would encourage members of the school board and candidates for the school board to not only take a look at teacher salaries, but take a close look at students' performance in the way of test scores. Are those test scores improving year after year, or are they declining year after year? And I'm going to leave it at that. It could be discussed further, but I think it's worth a closer look. That aside, the reason I'm here is to ask the question of the candidates concerning a particular book which is well known nationwide and is quite controversial. It happens to be a book that introduces children and adolescents to alternative lifestyles. And I'm not going to insult anyone here by showing illustrations within this book, but rest assured there are some illustrations that some would consider to be inappropriate. We have been assured by the superintendent of the Dover School District that this book does not appear in elementary school libraries within the Dover city limits. And I'm curious to know if, by a show of hands, any of our candidates for the Barrington School Board would object to this book being made available to elementary school students in the elementary school libraries. And if you would object to that, would you please raise your hand? Thank you, Richard. You have my vote, and I wish you a good evening.
Thank you. I would ask that we give all the candidates a chance to speak. The day of raising hands is over for most of us as adults. That's for the students. Any questions for our candidates?
Ask another one. Frank Natale, 115 Toland Road. So when you mentioned you worked at Oyster River, you reminded me of something I read last year. So I guess one of your colleagues, are you familiar with Rachel Bassett that works? She was recently appointed as the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Coordinator at the school.
Rachel Blansett.
Yeah, sorry, I mispronounced her name. So she is on record as being, quote, pro-black, pro-queer, and pro-ho, and has made social media posts stating that, white people are not okay. So as a school board, if Barrington decided that they needed that type of position filled, would you support hiring a person that is pro-black, pro-queer, pro-ho, and they would say things that white people are not okay?
First, Richard.
Wow. Well, thank you. No, I'll go back to my comment before. I believe that our kids have a right to have their own identity, and whether they're transgender or they wear clothing that's different. I'll say this, my family is of mixed race. My daughter married a black man, and so my grandkids are mixed race. And I'll tell you this, I love my son-in-law. You know, to me, skin color doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter to me if a person, what their sexual orientation is, or whether they want to identify as a boy or a girl or whatever the case is. But what is important is making sure that everybody feels safe, and that goes to every single kid that are in our schools. And it's the same thing with the teachers. My expectation for staff would be is that they're there to teach the kids what they're expected to teach, and if their lifestyle views are a little bit different as a teacher, that's not the appropriate place to be doing that in the classroom. I would expect that. I think there's a pretty heavy lift on the shoulders of parents to make sure that their kids understand that people are different in this world and that not everybody's going to be like us. To a slight degree, I think that the schools should not be doing 100% of that education. I believe parents need to play a big role in that. But I absolutely do not support the idea that any teacher should be pushing their personal agenda on the kids they're teaching.
Thank you. Tim?
I don't know where to go with that one. I mean, it's a very limited piece of information, right? We're talking about a social media post. So that doesn't necessarily tell me what the person is. It certainly doesn't tell me what they're teaching in the schools. That said, if that post is reflective of who they are and what they were doing and the type of comments that they were making in our schools, clearly it's not appropriate for a school. So I'm going to need more information before I can say if this person's qualified to be in the school or not. Social media is social media to me. I don't think it is the end all be all of who we are or you know, what type of educator we could be. But yeah.
Thank you. Jason?
That's my employer. That's not why I'm here tonight. So, and I was not a part of the hiring process of Rachel. There have been an adequate amount of forums that have been recorded or are on the Oyster River YouTube page for you to view at your own leisure as to the qualifications of our DEIJ coordinator and very head-on direct addressing of podcasts that she made in her 20s, I believe, when she was a student prior to applying for that position. So I defer you to Oyster River and the hiring practices and their public forums they had on bringing in a DEIJ coordinator and who they brought in. As a public employee, all of us, Chief Walker can attest to this too, you're in the public. You have to have a public persona that displays public approval and approval of other folks. If I had a very divisive social media that showed a slant towards one group and not another, it would be hard to ask folks to hire me as a public employee or to vote for me as a public officer. So everybody running for public office should check, their digital citizenship, their digital footprint, to make sure that it's, something that they're comfortable with strangers seeing. So, but herself and her hiring, that's been addressed by my employer on their YouTube page, so you can check that out.
My question was, would you guys vote to hire somebody like her? Is it yes or no? Or I would ask to raise her hand, but Jack doesn't allow that. Yes, would you hire somebody like her to be on Barrington?
Unfortunately, the recording can't hear you. If you want to follow up, I just ask over the microphone.
I don't think it was entered.
Okay, but thank you. Now is a chance, as we're coming to the end, I want to give 1 minute to each of the candidates to summarize anything they've said tonight and their last ask for the vote on March 12th. In reverse order, Jason's first.
Thank you. So it's evident, public education is for every student. And it's evident that not every decision that is made is going to be agreed upon or popular. But it's also important to know that the three of us tonight, not any one of us will make a decision on our own. We will have an opinion, and we're a team of 5 who take the advice of our superintendent, who has taken it from their district leadership and their school leadership and educators. So we are a voice of many. We are one of many. I would like to think that my experience in education directly will allow me to plug right in and be a voice for every student in this town. So I thank you for listening to your questions, listening to my answers, whether you agreed with all of them or not. And I hope that I can have your support on March 12th. So thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I ask your support this March in voting to re-elect me for the school board. I feel good about the things we've accomplished over the last 10 years, and I want to see those through. I think I got another 10 years in me. So, yeah, I appreciate you all coming out. I appreciate the questions, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
I too thank you for your support tonight, and more importantly, I would hope that you folks would consider supporting me on March 12th. I appreciate the fact that there's 3 candidates running for 2 positions. It gives the people a choice. I don't think there's a huge difference between the philosophies of all 3 of us sitting up here at this table. And I appreciate the fact that there's two candidates running for selectmen so that we have a choice. When we have uncontested races, it makes it tough because now you're getting what you're getting. And it's, I don't, if you folks decide that Mr. Baker and Mr. Hatfield are your choice, I'm okay with that. And, and I think they would say the same thing, that, there's, none of us have an axe to grind. My real big claim to fame is more getting back to collaboration, because I think it'll be better for the community as a whole to share resources.
Thank you. Now I'll correct myself. It's now time to use your hands and thank these people for stepping up to serve the community. Thank you. And I'll ask that our select board candidates come forward. And I'll be turning over the moderation to Ron.
Ready? Okay. Okay, we're gonna do the select board portion of the forum tonight. We have two candidates for one 3-year seat on the select board. We have incumbent Dana Manschreck and challenger Rob Russell. So we will start with our 3-minute little discussion about why you want to be elected to this position. And who should we start with? We'll go alphabetically. Dan.
Thank you, Ron. Dan Manschreck. I've been on the select board now for 3 years. I think that I've done a good job. I think that our select board has done an excellent job in the last 3 years. We have rationalized, I think, our budgeting system. I think we've increased the transparency of our decision-making and the way we work. And I think we've made great efforts to include as many people as possible. Select board members, in addition to attending select board meetings twice a month, are also assigned to various committees and groups in town. Each of us has some people are on the planning board, some people are on the zoning board. I've been on the advisory budget committee, the ABC, for all 3 years that I've been in the select board. And also include, I was also there for 2 years before I became a select board member. I'm on the transfer station advisory committee and also on the library, a liaison for the library. Again, I think each of those organizations has worked very well. I think we've had some connection. I work with the school board as well. I've been on their liaison since I started this 3 years ago. And hopefully that communication has helped. Much of what Mr. Walker was talking about, improving this coordination with school board and with these other entities. I'm proud of my work, but I'm also more proud of this town. We have great fire and EMS services. We have a police department that's smaller than it's supposed to be, but actually does an excellent job. Our highway department maintains some 81 miles of road, and I think they do a great job. If you get into a storm, you'll note the town's streets are much better than the state streets because they work so well. We have good recreation. Our history from the tricentennial and the other things is incredible. We have miles and miles of trail. We have this new town hall, which was largely funded by the federal government, thanks to our town administrator, who put together, worked very hard to get that, as well as other things. I'm really proud of the people that work in our town. We have great people working in every place, from this offices, to the town administrator, the police chief, fire chief, and all the people that are in there in these organizations. So I'm really quite proud of that. But what you're looking at for this election is growth, or what happens in the future. We're going to grow. Some people are not as enthused about that as others, but it's inevitable that there will be more people. And so I think we want to look today at the various things that we can do, and I'd like to answer your questions there. Thank you.
Okay, Rob Russell, you have 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Okay. All right. So my name is Robert Russell, live at 99 Toland Road. Kind of known in town. People either tend to like me or not. It's been an interesting introduction for how I got involved in politics. Never had any desire to do anything political. I don't even consider myself a politician. Just to give you just a little bit about me in case you don't know who I am, I've been in town for 19 years, which is not long. Happily married. I have 2 daughters. They're 17 and 20. One goes to UNH. I'm a former police officer. I worked for the city of Dover for just shy of 10 years. Got fired in 2013, put on the Lorry list, decertified. So I don't hide that. I was a paramedic for 19 years. I'm also retired from the U.S. Army. I did 27 total years. Most of that was guard time, but I did deployed to Afghanistan. I got hurt as an infantryman, and I have a medical retirement as well. I own the gun shop on Toland Road that's out of my home. And if you've seen the obnoxious signs across from Cozy's Pizza with my mug, those are my signs, and I own the 9 acres that's by the gravel pit. So why am I here, guys? Why am I here before you? Some people will sit here and say, and then I'm not directing this at Dan, and by the way, politicians tell you all the things they're going to do. I'm basically going to tell you what I'm not going to do. I have attended a lot of select board meetings, and I've watched quite a few, and what I've seen is a lot of stuff just get rubber stamped. I've seen people say, including people who are here tonight, well, you know, the town, our percentage of the budget that is what we impact is only, 16, 17%. It's very small. We should act like that's 100% all the time. I've heard people say, well, this budget item is only $10,000. It's a drop in the bucket. I've actually heard that said right here. And if you
if you did your personal budget or your family budget with that attitude, it would be terrible. Yes, we're growing 100%, but we need to support our small businesses. We need to get rid of a lot of the fluff, and we need to get this town back on track. We need to do anything we can to get taxes down, but keep the important services, police, fire, and the roads. But there's extra stuff that we just can't afford. So, yeah, that's my opening statement. And by the way, I do respect Dan in quite a bit. We disagree on a lot, but I respect him for his service. And anyway, just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any questions from the audience? Julian, yep.
Let's go.
Julian Olivier, Beauty Hill Road. Bob, I'm curious, what is the fluff you'd get rid of?
What
Or
we
Dan,
can't afford.
Dan, or what fluff do we need?
I'm sorry. Do I answer first?
But I'm directed that to Dan.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Rob.
you have 2 minutes, Rob.
Okay. It's very simple. Anything you can't afford. If you buy stuff that you can't afford, it's extra. Obviously, fluff is a term. So if your budget is X amount and you're spending too much, and if you have runaway spending, and if you can't afford to put a building up, or you can't afford to spray for Japanese knotweed or whatever, you just have to make cuts. You have to make sacrifices. There's obviously, again, I talked about the core services, and those have to always be here because emergency services and roads are absolutely critical. But there are things that we can do without. We will make it. I mean, Barrington will survive another 5, 10, 20 years, and we will be okay. And it doesn't mean that things won't be difficult, and it doesn't mean that some of the buildings won't be, renovated as quickly as we want, and we may not have, some of the things that would be really nice. But that's what I'm talking about, fluff. There's a lot of things I'd like. I'd like a new truck. I'd like to re-roof my home because I'm having some shingles falling off my house. I can't afford it, so I'm not doing some things. They would be poor financial decisions. So that's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Not the kind of stuff that you mix with peanut butter for the sandwich.
Glad you cleared that up. Okay. Okay, Dana?
Well, I think if you look closely at the budget and hear our budget hearings and see the discussions that we have, I think we have cut down on a lot of extra things. If you come to the ABC meetings or listen to their ABC meetings, then you hear the discussions that we have. I think we've really made a very lean budget. There are increases expense. Things increase. We have to hire people, and it costs more to hire people in all sorts of areas. And we also have some things that will make this community a community over time and into the future, a town that we want to live in. We need a new library. We need new, it would be good to have recreational areas and places where we could meet as a family, as a community, to do these things. Yes, they're expensive. Yes, they cost money, and they're not roads, they're not fire, but they are important to making us a community.
Okay, thank you. More questions? Yes.
Scott Shepherd, 97 Birch Lane. It's interesting that you talk about fluff and that government is, I guess, way overfunded. All the budget articles, all the spending is online. What is that fluff? It's obviously something pretty substantial to you. Can you point to anything in particular that you feel needs to be jettisoned? Or is this just sort of a general, I don't want taxes,
Nearly everything that's not essential is what I'm saying.
And what is that?
The TIF doesn't need to happen. That's going to be an absolute mess in 8 years. As much as I wholly support the library and have supported it financially with my business, it does not need to happen in the way that they want it to happen, in my opinion. We have a police and fire renovation coming up very soon that is critical to the infrastructure and safety of the town. If you haven't looked at the highway building, It is not in great shape. There are other things that are more important than these community gathering spaces. I can do community gathering in my home, and I can do other things. And there's other places that people do gather, and they go, and there's parks and things we can utilize. Those are extra. And if we can't afford it, and if people are on fixed incomes and fixed budgets, that $150 extra a year that our current, if all those warrant articles passing, it's like 143. I don't have it in front of me right now, but that is too much for some people. There are people that's too much. Guys like you and I, we might be able to say, I can afford it, but I don't know your budget, but some people that is actually cutting into their food and other things.
So you're against, just to be clear, the TIF and the library and things like that. You're not against the core budget that the town has. That's reasonable.
So Dan makes a comment about the ABC. I have routinely seen the ABC recommend against certain funding things, and then the board votes it all in. So I believe he's recently on the ABC, but the prior ABC would constantly recommend against things to be voted for. And I sat right in this first row, and the board voted for them. So, and it's maybe 3,000 here, 5,000 there, but you cannot look at it that way. You can't look at it that way. It's all goes to a big picture. And yes, I think we need to have some very lean years. And that's not popular. I know.
Okay, Dan, want to reply to that?
Well, I would, excuse me, Dan. I would disagree with Mr. Russell. I think some of these things that we are talking about are essential, not because people's lives live or die without fire protection, for example, but this community doesn't have a lot of places. We recently had a concert series that people attended and loved, and we're looking for space. The TIF is just a way to pay for what we hope to be a recreational area that will involve all the people in this town. And I agree, we want to make it very lean. We cut things down. We actually do have discussions and arguments. I think if you look at all of them, come to the deliberative session this Saturday, there were lots of discussions. So I think we have a lean budget, but a budget that makes this an attractive town. It makes it a place we want to live, not just a house, not just a home, but a place that we want to live as a community.
Thank you. Dan?
Taxpayer, and I was a selectman. There is fluff. We tightened it up a little bit and stuff. It's hard to do. And then, I am against the TIF. The TIF, no TIF, is a big if. Will they come? It's a financial nightmare in my book and stuff. I'm not against buying it outright, have it budgeted and stuff.
Dan, could you pose a question?
So
for these guys?
I'm just stating my opinion.
Well,
and then, my question is on the fluff. Now. On the fluff, that's what I'm going against
it. Question that would be helpful.
There are some things you can tell you. How would you do it? Carry yourself personally and making a decision and stuff. I pissed off a lot of people when I was a selectman. I tried to do the way it does. How do you put personal and the people? How do you decide how to vote?
Okay, we'll start with Dan on this time.
Okay. We represent, on the select board, we represent the people. We listen to people. That doesn't mean that everyone agrees on everything. But I think when we look at the master plan, we look at the meetings we've had on this thing, people want to have some of these things like a place to meet, an increase in recreational area, place for rec to increase their programs. And I think people want a new library. The TIF district is just a way to help pay for this. In some ways, it approaches one of the things that we've had a select board meeting. Someone came in and said, all these new people coming in wanting new things, why don't the new people pay for it? Well, in many ways, the TIF is just a financial tool to approach that same thing of having the new people, the new developments, the people moving in will help pay for these new things that we're having. The TIF district itself is a separate, in some ways, a separate issue. What we're looking for is a way to pay for this park area that we want that the population, the people, have largely spoken for.
Okay, Rob?
Okay, so I may not have a Barrington government email, but I have a ton of people contact me through my business email. They come to my shop. They message me on Facebook. Okay, so I hear from a lot of folks who live in town. And I realize that Dannon is listening to a group of people, and I think that it may be a bubble of certain people that are probably more in line with what he thinks he wants to see the town and the direction he wants it to go. I hear from lots of people that think these things are extra and unnecessary. The same people ask me that, you know, what would I do if I were to become a selectman? And I tell them that I'm against these things, not for instance, that I don't think the library needs to be fixed, because it clearly does. And I've been very vocal about that. I just don't feel that it does in the current statement. The TIF is going to be a nightmare because we build it up for 8 years, and after 8 years, that funding stops. And then you have to figure out, how do we support the infrastructure? There's a lot of potential issues there, and it's kind of like you have a party for 8 years and you're getting all this money in, and all of a sudden the record stops, and you got to figure out, how do we fund this? And governments are great about planning and funding, and I'm saying that sarcastically, so I would be very concerned about that. I've seen the emails that go to Joyce and other selectmen, and I see them simply respond, duly noted, when people email them and say, we don't want the TIF and we don't want the current library. What duly noted means is, I don't care about what you're saying, and I'm going to go forward with my opinion. We don't have districts here in Barrington. We simply have 5 selectmen, 5 select board members, and at the end of the day, they might just listen to the people that they're listening to and not actually all their constituents. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from home. Jane Olivier. Unmute yourself, Jane.
Uh-oh.
Jane, can you unmute? We can't hear you.
Okay. Jane Olivier, Beauty Hill Road. So to both of you, then please tell me your viewpoint of what the importance of community and safety. That's what I want to know. I worked at the town voting. I felt so scared knowing guns were coming in. I will say it. And so I find that if we have no culture, no community, I think of all the murders in our country. So I really am concerned when I hear someone speaking about bare bones, no community. We need that library. We need thinking. So please tell what you really think of what community means to a human being. Thank you.
Did I miss the beginning? Did she say I do? Okay, I apologize. But did you say you do a job in town? Did I miss that?
I taught in the school for 25.
Okay.
I taught in the school, Bob.
I thought I recognized you. Okay.
Mr. Russell, I've taught in the school for 25 years, for 40 years in all, and I'm a Russell from Newfoundland. So I understand the difference of community. I want to know what the both of you think about it. I think I do know what Dan is. Go ahead.
Okay.
Rob,
thank you for correcting. So community is whatever it is for that person. Community may be in your home. Community may be your wife or your husband and your children. Community may be your church. Community might be a nightclub in Dover. I don't know. It's a very individual thing. It may be people at a library. It might be a gun range and people that you see every Sunday because you go and you shoot with them. Okay? Community is very individualistic. It could be people you go hiking with on a trail. I'm certainly not going to define to anyone in this room or anyone that's listening what community is. If community for you is the library, then God bless you. I think that's wonderful, and I support that 100%. I hadn't stepped in the library since I was 15 when I met with Michelle I know she doesn't work at the library anymore, but when she was the head librarian a year and a half ago. So, but just because it's not my thing doesn't mean it's not your thing, okay? So community is a, to define community, I think, I don't know, I don't think I can define it, to be perfectly honest, but it's your family network, it's your bubble, it's your support network, I guess. I don't know, Danny, give it a shot.
Yeah. Well, I believe you asked what my opinion of the community is.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
I think community is a much larger thing. It's where we live. It's the people with whom we must deal and can deal. And we have a community where we don't all agree on everything, just as our families sometimes don't even agree with myself sometimes. But we need to share a common respect and appreciation of each other. And I think that we can foster that. We can't make a community, but we can foster that through our government. And that's one of the reasons I would continue to run for this select board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions here? Randall?
Thank you once again for allowing me to speak. Randall Heller, 113 Toland Road. Does Barrington, quote, need a new library? No, some want a new library. I want a new library because it's a quality of life issue for me, and I will be voting for a new library. But I don't think Barrington needs a new library. That aside, I'll get to the question. At last year's deliberative session, Mr. Manchek stated that he supported the town's lawsuit against 2A Tactical and still felt it was a good idea and the right decision, albeit that lawsuit was withdrawn, costing Barrington thousands of dollars, i.e. the Barrington taxpayer thousands of dollars, costing Mr. Russell of 2A Tactical thousands of dollars, and made it more difficult for him to make that transition to his new property and make a move. So I asked Mr. Manchek if he has changed his mind regarding the lawsuit, and if not, why?
Yes, sir. No, I have not changed my opinion. I think the lawsuit was appropriate at the time. We had asked Mr. Russell to either bring his business into what was compliance, or if he thought that the fact that he was in compliance when we first approached him with this, if he would go to the zoning board where he could appeal. 2 months after we'd initially, he had agreed to change things in 6 months. 2 months later, it still had not changed. And so at that point, we brought forth a suit. Immediately after the select board collectively voted to go forward with that suit in hopes of getting him to comply or to go to the zoning board. He then applied to the zoning board. We put the suit on hold till the zoning board made a decision. The decision was appealed by one of your neighbors, and came forward to the zoning board. The zoning board confirmed their previous opinion. At that point, we dropped the lawsuit.
Okay. Well, from someone from the outside looking in, the fact that the lawsuit was dropped puts it under suspicion of being not necessarily inappropriate, but unnecessary. And I'll leave the rest to Mr. Russell to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to rehash something that's been rehashed many times. I just will say that, and I know we disagree on this, I have provided the documentation to show we applied for and were accepted to go to the zoning board, and then I was served the lawsuit. But this is a couple years ago, and I think we disagree, and why don't we just move on?
Good idea. Let's see if anybody else before you're up, Dan, just a second. Nobody else? Okay, Dan, go ahead.
I don't ask questions of, but that's why I was trying to ask. How can a person sit on a board and make judgment and have different opinions and stuff and try to balance it out. And I don't want to talk about past history or present history or what's right or wrong and stuff. As a contractor, I have to do things from codes and follow for a reason, and it makes life run smoother. And how, I want to go back to my first question. How can you balance the scales of justice as a person sitting here tonight, make a decision if you agree with it or you don't agree with it?
Rob, you can take that one first.
And it's just like, whose decision?
Now, right now, people actually make decisions.
Sorry, I just want to clarify with Dan.
These people right here are going to ask you a question, and you got to make a decision. Not just care about your personal feelings or your past history and stuff, but you got to balance out what's good for this public.
Okay. Again, I don't consider myself a politician. I've never held any office, but I have been on the side of the road where, you know, as a cop and other times where I've had a lot of discretion and I've had to make decisions that had a lot of impact on people's lives. And I had to make judgment calls, and I felt like I made the right calls. Generally, the time I spent as a cop, my focus was to help people. That's why I did the job. Not that I know I'm entering into this police side, but that's really how I look at as a selectman. My job would be to help people. You have a massive amount of discretion, whether it's bringing in a lawsuit, it's your vote, which again is just one of 5. You get calls from people. I only know this because I've been told, you know, people are reaching out to you because they want help. They're in desperate situations, or they feel that, you know, they need help with this or that. You have to also be ethical and not get too involved with things that you can't. So there's a balance, and I just feel like as long as you're doing the right thing, and again, how do you define that? But if you're being, you know, you're doing the right thing and being ethical and doing things in the best interest of the people, and I say the people before the town because the town is the people, then I think you're always going to make the right decision. That's my answer.
Yeah, Dennis?
Obviously, in the community, there are differences of opinion frequently. And you know, for having been on the select board, you get differing opinions from different people. And then you try to look at that, and you look at the future of what you think, or I think, should be, and the bulk of the people that are talking to me and hearing their different opinions. And then you make a decision, you stick with it, you stand up for it, you accept it. Sometimes it was the wrong decision, but you made it in good faith. And if you can make the decision in good faith, even if other people disagree, or even if eventually it turns out to be the wrong thing, I think that is what every government political officer should be doing. And that's what I try to do when I make decisions.
Okay, more questions? Yep, Frank.
Road. First, I just want to let Jane know that one of her fears was feeling unsafe in the school. New Hampshire is consistently ranked one of the safest states in the country, part and parcel to we have a great community up here, but also because of our God-given right to self-protect that is codified by our Second Amendment right in the Bill of Rights. So to go on what Randy had mentioned before, the difference between wants and needs. So I have 3 kids, so they have lots of wants, but I try to tell them, you know, there's things you want, and there are things you need. So it seems like a lot of the articles that just gets rubber stamped 5-0 approval by the board for everybody, everything just to get passed, which just means everybody's wants gets approved, and our taxes can continue to go up. The Federal Reserve prints $2 trillion. Half of it goes to a foreign war. Our money is constantly inflated away. So at home, our own budgets, we constantly have to tighten our belts. How come government doesn't tighten its belt? Where can Barrington tighten its belt? In the meantime, what are our needs versus what are our wants that we can put off maybe for a few years until things recover, if anything does recover? So mostly for you, Dan, as a current board member, where do you see those cuts coming from specifically? And then Rob, if you have anything to mention as well. Thank you.
Ben, you're up.
Sure. Again, I think we don't just rubber stamp. I think if you listen to us discuss this and look at it, we do have a fairly we look very closely, depend a lot on the ABC. The Budget Committee really does an in-depth look at everything, and we don't necessarily accept everything. When the budget was initially sent to us, I think it was, 9%? Mr. Kiefer can nod or not nod. And we've cut that down. It is more expensive than last year. Things are more expensive. Partly it's contractual. Partly it's because of the reality of what the wages require. And then we're talking about the library. We're talking about space behind caliphs, for example. Those are things that, one, the library or the new building for the library may not be there next year. We actually have a commitment from the library board that if it doesn't pass it a third time, they will not approach it again. But I think this is the time. This is the cheapest it's going to be, and I think it will be a useful thing for us to vote for. Will the world end if we don't do it? Probably not, but I think the quality of our life may suffer from it, certainly for many of us. The same with that area behind Caleb's. This gives us the opportunity as a town, through the select board and through the committee that will be formed to look at that, to listen to the people and decide what we want to do as a town with that particular property, as opposed to just turning it over to a developer who may not do something that the rest of the town would appreciate. We can disagree on that if you choose, but that's certainly my opinion in the direction I want to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, to answer Frank, and a little bit, there was a question earlier about safety, and I think they're related. I have a very distinct background in public safety. I worked in public safety nearly my entire adult life. I said earlier, and I just want to reiterate, police, fire, roads, there's almost nothing they could ask for. And I say almost because, I mean, if they wanted a helicopter, George Joy, to fly around with, I would probably say no. But you have to fund them, and you have to fund them well. Because a few years ago, you know, I had a grand mal seizure at my house. And I woke up, and there was George Joy towering over me in my kitchen. And Barrington Fire was right down the street. And they took very good care of me. I'm proud to say that. And they've expanded their services significantly, because that was in 2000, I don't even know. It was like 2014 or 15. So there's things that 100% we have to not just fund, but fund well. And by the way, pay these employees well, the firefighters, the police officers, the road maintenance folks, okay? I believe in that. But what I'm saying is these other things, there are stuff that either has to go or you have to wait. And I got to tell you, I'm sick of hearing we need a committee for this, a committee for that, all right? Energy committee, gone. All right, you know, $10,000 we used to fund them, and now we're talking about, initially it was, we're not going to put solar panels on the town hall because it doesn't work, and now I'm seeing we might. You want to just waste money, keep funding committees, okay? What we need is one committee to save money, okay? And that committee should be the Board of Selectmen. So anyway, all right, I'm good.
You guys are good with your internal clocks. You're right.
I don't know.
Right on schedule.
I don't know.
Any more questions from the audience, either here or at home? Probably about the last chance here.
I thought someone would have a good zinger for me.
Anybody? Rick?
But I think it's fairly certain. I think libraries are as much as important in the community. Libraries are as schools and recreation and fire and police, and it's all one big. That's what makes a community. If we need it all. Rob, you've talked about the fact that you don't support this library project that's coming before the voters this year. So just tell me what would it take for you to support these folks coming back for the library? And then Dan and I just ask you to elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, so and just to clarify, I absolutely support the library project, and that is not just, I'm not just saying that to pander to a group. My wife and daughters got so much use out of the library. My oldest daughter, Emily, did 2 summers of an internship there. I've met with Susan, again, when it was Michelle, right? Was the did I say the wrong name? Melissa, I'm sorry.
It's an M word.
Anyway, thank you. So again, it may not be my thing, but I 100% support it. And I've been in there. I've seen I think it's 8 shelves high, and people have to get on the a step stool. I mean, it's not ADA compliant, and it's certainly not ideal. So we need to do something. 100%. I just don't think the timing is right. I know we're talking about a giant renovation and a 2nd floor on the police and fire building, which to me is a priority over a library. And I know some people may not agree with me, and that's fine, and I respect that. But I feel like you've got to do that first. Keep putting money away, build those, the capital improvement funds, and then move on. This building may be a great building, but there's other options. I see Susan nodding. Susan, I love you. I think you're great. No, I see you doing this. Like I said, we need to do something. This is not me going, no library. That is not what I'm saying. But I don't think the timing is correct. I think it's bad timing, and I hate to see that $500,000 go away. With the 3 strikes, you're out. I don't want to see that go away, but ultimately it's the voters that will decide.
Yeah, obviously, Rob and I disagree, which is okay. I think that the timing is right. This is the opportunity we have. It's less expensive than any proposal we've had so far for the library. I think the timing is right. The place is right. I think it is essential to the community, and I think that the voters hopefully will vote for it this year, and I certainly would support that.
Okay, we've come to the time when we can have a final statement from each of you. It's almost time to wrap up. So, Rob, you can be first.
Oh, gosh. All right. So, first of all, thank you for the time, and Ron and Jack and Connor and everybody that put this together. I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate that. I really do. I've met many people in this audience, even people that are diametrically opposed to my thoughts and feelings. But I like a lot of you, and I do love Barrington. I really do. And I hear from a lot of people, and I hear from a lot of people that, again, may not like some of my stands, but we talk and we communicate. I would just ultimately, at the end of the day, if you want to give me a shot, vote for me on the 12th. It's a big step to ask a guy who is an old grunt and a fired cop, and an alcoholic that hasn't drank in 10 years, to step up and be a selectman. But I feel that this is needed for the town, and I think there's some things that need to change. So that's why I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, Dan.
I want to thank you all again for setting up, but also thank you to the audience here and those who are online who've taken the time to offer your opinions, to ask questions, and to be here for this. I think my record speaks for me. I think the positions that I've told you about today, and I'd be happy to answer other people's questions about other things at some other venue. But I would appreciate your vote on the 12th of March. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, thanks to the candidates and the audience. We've been doing these forums for probably 20-something years now. And this is probably the best attended in person that I've seen in a long, long time. And that's good. Just like to know what, doesn't have to tell me now, but just sometime let us know if we should keep doing these. Do you like them? How could they be better? What other events might be good for getting to know the candidates? We've done various things over the years with little meets and greets here and there at the library and another use for a library. Things like that. But just let me know when you run into me at one of those many elections we're having this year, what we should do. Should we keep doing these? I like them, especially now that we have help doing these. Happy to share the enjoyment. So again, thanks for coming out, and we'll see you at the polls.